And what about first pictures? I have a note here about first pictures being on the farm.
There are a lot of good pictures that I remember my mother collected and put in picture books. We have them in storage in the garage there. We don't have them out because we don't have enough room to have them available. But there were a lot of pictures on the farm, a lot with my cousins and my brother and me playing around the house. We used to love to get on little two-wheeled vehicles that had a long tongue out front so you could put two mules or horses in front of them, and I don't know what it was designed to pull, but we would lift up the tongue and put one person in the seat, and then we'd chase all around the house. The driveway went literally around the house,
Mm-hmm.
and so we would do that up there, and there are some pictures of that kind of stuff. There's one picture that I remember. It must have been something like three or four, not four, but somewhere between 2 and 3. They had picked me up when obviously we were all out going for a walk in the fields, and there's a great big haystack.
Mm-hmm.
And they had taken me and thrown me in the haystack, and I was just there with this great big grin on my face, and that's one of the best known ones.
Mm-hmm.
But there are a lot of pictures that we took playing around the farmhouse.
Yeah.
And
What was it like traveling to the farm all the way from New York into Wisconsin?
I don't remember a lot of it. I honestly can't remember too much of it. I understand that my mother, when it was time for me to be born, decided that she wanted me to be born on the farm, and so she had taken a train from New York City to Chicago, and then they came down some 90 miles, whatever it is, to Chicago, picked her up and took her home. I was born, and then 6 weeks later, I understand, I went back with her to
Mm-hmm.
New York City. I don't know too much about how we got back and forth. My father, somehow or other, I think probably because somebody got broken, had to sell it for nothing. For a while, at the very earliest years, had a 1928 Buick sedan, that had apparently rolled over, and some of the battery acid had gotten in the wood frame. There was a particular smell that you could still smell because it was always there. It never really got out of it. But we traveled back and forth 2 or 3 summers anyway, I guess, with that before he had to get rid of that machine. The one year coming back, I remember I was sitting in the back seat, and the back seat had suitcases from our summer.
Yeah.
And it was on the back seat because there wasn't any trunk in those days in those cars.
Mm-hmm.
So the suitcases were on the back seat, and I was perched up on top of it. And it was night, and we finally came through New Jersey to the Washington Bridge, which was a new bridge then in those days. We were going across the bridge, and I remember that we were looking. I was sitting high and looking out the window, and we could see the whole city's lights, of course, in Manhattan.
Wow.
And I remember they told the story, I don't know, on me, I don't know how many times, but they told the story about the fact that I was so excited about seeing the New York City lights again, and I wonder if New York City has missed me. Gave everybody a laugh for a long time on that one.
Do you think that every time now you travel to New York City?
I don't travel to New York City very often, but yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you guys ever get flat tires in the family car?
I'm sure we did. I don't remember them.
Really?
You know, tires weren't exactly the greatest accessory for cars in those days.
Yeah.
And roads weren't the roads we have now either.
Yeah.
I can remember some dirt roads that were main roads in those days.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What about Grandpa Gifford and the 30-minute picked corn mule?
Say that again?
A story about Grandpa Gifford and the 30-minute picked corn rule. 30-minute picked corn rule, sorry.
Now there's a story I can't remember.
Okay.
I do not remember that.
Okay.
30-minute pick corn?
That's what I'm reading.
Okay.
Yeah.
somebody shot you that question because they heard it somewhere along the line.
I guess so.
Yeah. No, I don't know.
We'll try that one again later on, maybe.
I don't know that one.
Yeah. These are the one where you got kicked by a mule? I doubt you remember that one.
Oh, I do remember that. I do remember that. In the barn that I described a few minutes ago, you walk down and down that out the back door, and then down the little short road to the barn, and turn into the barn. And on the right was the pasteurizing room. On the left was a stable, and I think it must have had room for about 6 horses and mules. And I remember walking behind them. You're not supposed to walk behind horses and mules, and especially mules, apparently. But I did, and I remember a mule. I can still remember the mule turning around, and in its stall, the rear end was facing me, and turning and seeing me. And the next thing I remembered, I was on a shelf back here, and on the outside wall. And, I could have been kicked in the face. I could have been kicked anywhere. I have no idea where I was kicked at, except I was okay.
Yeah.
And I was up there. That's all I can remember about that. I have an idea. It was one of those stupid things that I did that I got away with murder again.
Mm-hmm.
Which we all do a few times.
Yeah. Do you remember when you described the farmhouse when you first got connected up to electricity? Do you remember what that was like? Did that change the farmhouse at all?
Yeah, it did. We had light.
Yeah.
We had, before that, there was light, but it was dim light, and like one light per room kind of a thing. Mm-hmm. I remember the brightest light in those battery powered days was in the kitchen. And but then we all of a sudden had light that you could have all over the house, and the whole house was a brighter place. I do remember that very well.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember anything about electric equipment. My grandmother had a little sewing room on the first floor of the house, and she did not have an electric sewing machine. It was the pedal machine from the days when there was no electricity, doubtless.
Mm-hmm.
But the house was definitely a brighter place,
Mm-hmm.
no question about it.
What about laundry? Did they end up getting an electric
Yes,
machine?
there was an electric washing machine, but it wasn't anything like anything we talk about. It was nothing more than a great big tub with a frame, an electric motor down below,
Mm-hmm.
exposed.
Yeah.
And it was not a, whatever you call it, rotating kind of a thing.
Mm-hmm.
It was an up and down kind of a thing with 3 great big copper cups, and the thing would do this and move around like that and agitate the clothes
Mm-hmm.
in that. Yeah, I remember that. We did not, at that I recall, have an electric wringer though. I remember the clothes wringer, which is the way we did drying,
Mm-hmm.
or pre-drying, which you ran through a wringer and then carried them outside.
Wow.
I don't know what they did in the wintertime.
Yeah.
We weren't there much.
Yeah.
I think there was only that one time that we were there
Mm-hmm.
in the wintertime.
Did you have? Let's see here. Did you have any time you went on vacation? I'm seeing a note about going on vacation to Florida way back when, according to the note.
I'm told that we did.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember it.
Really?
No.
How old would you have been?
I don't know. 2 or 3 maybe.
Mm-hmm.
3, 4. I don't remember it. I don't remember going to Florida.
Okay.
No. My mother had gone to Florida, and my mother and her family, when in their earlier days, I know, had gone to Florida, and then had taken a boat over to an island. And I understand that at one point in time, my grandfather owned a little piece of an island out in the Gulf or the sea, whichever it was,
Really?
at that place. I presume that it was lost during the Depression time.
Mm-hmm.
but I know that they had gone to Florida,
Mm-hmm.
but I had not, that I can recall.
Okay.
If I did, nobody told me about it.
Did you? I'm curious. So your mother ended up. So your mother was the oldest of five. You said.
Of five, that's right.
And she left the farm to go to the big city. What
That's
do
right.
you think that was like for her and the family? I mean, that her parents would let her leave the farm in Wisconsin to go to New York City.
Well, she never talked about that. We can only speculate on it. That certainly in those days, especially, after all, that would be the early 1930s. It would be the 1920s. Yeah, definitely the 1920s, middle to 1920s. I can only imagine. For one thing, there was such a thing as the Roaring Twenties that we see in movies and read about in books. But I know that in the religious kind of a community that she would have been in,
Mm-hmm.
that would have been no part of it.
Yeah.
At all. It must have been quite an adventure. Of course, she's the eldest, and it must have been quite an adventure. And she was not married, and some of her sisters, two of the sisters anyway, maybe three, had already been married, young.
Yeah.
And I had cousins that were older than I was, so in Wisconsin. So she was, I guess, the oldest of the tribe, and in the New York area at Nyack, and it must have been quite an adventure, and especially when she falls for this tall, dark Armenian with a wonderful way of speaking and all that sort of jazz. That must have been quite an adventure.
Yeah. Did the Gifford, Grandpa and Grandma Gifford, like your father?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I never saw anything other than a good deal of affection. My father never went frequently to the farm, except to take and deliver us a couple of times.
Okay.
Excuse me. He didn't get a chance to spend much time there because most of those years he was working on his undergraduate and then finally graduate degree at Columbia.
Mm-hmm.
So summers were occupied pretty much with doing that for him. I do know that.
Absolutely. So that means that I don't know how strict your father was. That means that the times at the farm, not only were they an adventure, but they were adventures sort of separate from your father. And you had sort of a chance to not be in that strict environment that he had.
Yeah. Yeah, for him or for
you?
For me too. Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was always a good time on the farm. It was a lot easier than sometimes with my father.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. Although the difficult times with my father didn't really come until I was old enough to know better. Preteen and teenage years. Those are the really tough ones.
Sure.
But he was a tough disciplinarian right from the get-go. I mean, really, very authoritarian. That's just part of his heritage. That's all he knew.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm being told that the picked corn rule is that Grandpa Gifford would not eat any corn that had been picked more than 30 minutes before eating.
I can believe that. I can believe that because in those days, there weren't such things as hybrid corn that had all sorts of special, long-lasting freshness values that we do now.
Mm-hmm.
The sweetness in sweet corn would disappear pretty quick.
Wow.
And so if you wanted to have good sweet corn, there was no question about it. You did eat it quick. And we were told as boys, I remember my cousin and And my brother and I, we would go out and pick the corn and shuck it real quick and bring it in, and they put it in a pot of water. I remember the water was always already boiling, and cook the corn. And
Yeah.
we eat pretty quick.
Wow.
Yeah, I can believe that.
Yeah.
I can believe that.
Did anybody on the farm drink alcohol?
No.
No.
No. I don't think any of my maternal family were used alcohol at all, even to, I would dare say, even to this day. The cousins that I have, that I've known anything about, I have not in recent years kept close contact with them, but they were never participants in the enjoying alcohol at all. As a matter of fact, it was, for one thing, it would be against their religion. They'd be very strong. That it would be in that area that their choice would be made.
Makes sense. What about dancing?
Dancing?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think so.
Nothing.
I don't think so. They missed an awful lot of fun.